This is Don from Life's Journeys. In this video, we'll take you along sharing the journey of the United Airlines world-famous Island Hopper, a 14.5-hour flight from Honolulu to Guam, stopping at 7 Pacific Islands in between. Where does it all start? It all starts in Honolulu and the lounge. Just came out of the United Club, now down into the terminal. This is the G gates in Honolulu. This is where the flight from Chicago came in. Doing a lot of construction here. Island Hopper flight starts out of the F gates from gate F2, but wanted to do a bit of a walk, show everybody what the terminal's looking like in Honolulu. It's kind of a neat thing because one of the few places where you go outside to go between the various terminals. Hopefully this gets fixed up a bit. There's sort of construction everywhere. Okay, this is the outside, and you actually head out. I think they've got a little shuttle that drives between the two areas, but it literally takes about 2 minutes to walk. You see, if you'd been arriving at the F gates, or rather at the G gates, you'd have to take this outside walkway to get to baggage claim. And one interesting thing is you get a bit of a walk by the inside of the operating area. So to continue along through the walkway, that United plane over there is at gate F2, which is the aircraft that'll take us on the Island Hopper, making its way to Guam. Back through that breezeway and into the main terminal. Some of the nicer parts of the terminal. Is where a lot of the international airlines leave from. Pretty quiet. It's not yet 6:30 in the morning. To see a bit more activity down here. Yeah, and here's why. A Starbucks. After some time walking through the terminal, a little bit of wait in the gate waiting area, it was finally time to board and get the day started. It was still about 7 o'clock. We had a 7:25 departure, but we were on a 737-800, so not a huge plane, but not not a super tiny one either. I picked seat 7F for the entire journey, and that's a window seat in the economy, the first row of the economy plus section, so extra leg room. And just as I'm sliding in here, you can see where I'm at. You get the view looking back. It gave me window view, front of the wing for the entire journey. So it wasn't long after getting seated that we started to move and taxi towards our runway to take off. It was a little bit of condensation on the windows that morning, so this isn't giving the clearest view. But this is our takeoff from Honolulu, which was a lot of fun to come up and really get a great view of the ocean as we get off the island. I'll stop the commentary for a second and let you enjoy the sight and sound. We put Oahu and Honolulu behind us and settled in for the first 4-hour segment, roughly 4-hour segment, to Majuro. That's in the Marshall Islands. This would be the only segment of the flight on which we got until the last segment on which we got food service. So it started with a breakfast sandwich, a yogurt, and a breakfast bar. Not a bad meal. Good way to get the day started. One of the things I found really fascinating about this trip was just the chance to spend time looking out the window at the ocean and the various little islands and sandbars and atolls and that sort of thing that we passed over the course of the day. As a city dweller, it's a view that we just never, ever get to see. And, being landlocked, don't normally get this in our daily activity. But the structures, the colors, as you can see on these videos, were all just absolutely incredible. I loved it, couldn't get enough of it. Our first approach and many landings of the day was at the island of Majuro. It's in the Marshall Islands. And this landing would be somewhat typical of what we'd see during the day. Beautiful ocean water, beautiful islands along the way. In most of the cases, these landings, or the airport locations, are on the edge of the island. Not that they're very big islands at all. And you do the approach seeing water on pretty much all sides. This one a little bit different. It has a little bit more land to the side, which is a bit more comfortable. But on a lot of these, as you're going to see, we'll approach straight over water and come right in. So just picked up a few shots while we were on the ground. At each location that we stopped at, with one exception, we were able to get off the plane, go into the terminal, look around, stretch your legs, and then do the walk back on and settle back in before the next leg. The stops at each of the islands are typically about 45 minutes to an hour. They'd get on, do a security sweep. They'd have new passengers, some getting off, some getting on, and so just be a resettled in. It was nice to be able to get out, get some sunshine, stretch your legs, and just have a little bit of discussion with fellow passengers, and with the crew and that sort of thing. Most of the terminals had little kiosks in them, and that was quite neat places to pick up some little trinkets and stuff. So after the roughly 45-minute layover, we were next on our way to Kwajalein, and so this is showing the takeoff from Majuro as we head to Kwajalein. Kwaj, as it seems to be affectionately known by the mostly military and contractors that were going to that island. Its main or I guess note or claim is that it is a U.S. military post, and so Kwajalein was the one stop where I wasn't able to get, couldn't take any photos, couldn't take any video of either the landing approach or the takeoff or any of that. And it's also the one stop on the route where you're not able to disembark. You can only get off if you have orders. So had to stay put there. Having skipped over Kwajalein for the purposes of this video, since we couldn't land there and couldn't get off there, and I couldn't take any photos or videos, the next thing I've got is this is part of our approach into Kosrae, and then the landing at the island of Kosrae. Yeah, again, we're seeing, some. This one was a bit more mountainous than the other stops, perhaps due to volcanic activity. But as you can see, as I was mentioning earlier, as we approach the runway, it's water, 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 swamp, and then boom, we're down on the ground. And what was really cool about this is, not cool if you're a nervous flyer, but cool for aviation geeks, I suppose, is that the runway is pretty short and just over the minimum requirement for the plane. So they really hit the brakes hard, and you can tell on this clip that the plane slowed down really fast. And so just got a few pictures of as we approach the tiny local terminal in Kosrae. Don't get freaked out by the fire truck being out there. It's just where they normally park it. So after a short break, we were back up and on our way again, departing Kosrae. I'll let you listen to the sound of the engines revving up and the takeoff. After departing Kosrae, we again had some beautiful blue sky, blue water views over the ocean. It's views like this that really made this entire trip worthwhile for me. I just thought it was, I just can't gush enough about it. It was amazing. And then seeing, sort of these offshore islands like this that we saw. And this is the approach to Pohnpei. Not Pohnpei, that's a different thing in Italy. But if I'm pronouncing it right, Pohnpei. And just, again, beautiful, beautiful views. This is the landing as we hit the approach to the island. And, it's just remarkably tropical, remarkably beautiful, but incredibly, what seemed to me at least, incredibly isolated relative to the rest of the world. There's a bit more at this point than the 3-hour tour away from Honolulu, but I almost half expected to see Gilligan walk by on some of these islands. The skipper, the professor, Marianne, the whole crew, finally being rescued. I know there was a episode where they were, or a follow-on movie where they were in fact rescued, but it was still had that feel to it, and it was just really neat to see. So by the time I got into Pohnpei and this landing, it was probably the only spot of the whole day where we saw clouds and a little bit of overcast. Through the entire trip, the weather was just beautiful. Got really lucky. There was no rain, no anything else like that messed it up. So here's a few shots from on the ground in Pohnpei. They had some cool aircraft that were there waiting. So again, after a short stop, it was back on the plane and back up in the air for another takeoff. Give it a listen. From Pohnpei, we were on our way to Chuuk, which is the last island stop before Guam. At this point, it was getting to be, getting some more great views, but it's a long day. The entire journey from Honolulu to Guam takes about 14 and a half hours, and given that there's so much to see and watch along the way. Normally on a 14 and a half hour flight, I'd get a lot of rest, but I didn't on this one. And so I did start to get a little bit tired. So here we are getting into our approach to Chuuk, which is our last of the small, tiny islands along the way. This is one of the islands of Micronesia. And again, just a really neat place. As we went into the terminal here, the people on the ground were just so friendly and so amazing. And had a chance to meet a few of them, and largely thanks to, and this I think becomes one of the highlights of this trip as well, is the crew's pretty much the same for the whole journey. So great chances to talk to the flight attendants and the pilots, and I mean the pilots in particular just absolutely love flying this route. I guess because they get to do a lot of flying and not just autopilot in the air, plug it in and go. They're doing the takeoffs and landings on some more challenging runways, and as a pilot, that's just got to make it a lot more interesting and a lot more fun to do. They also really commented on the diving in the area, and they take time to go to these various islands and do some diving. Really made me wish that I was a diver, but the few times I tried it, trying to breathe underwater just absolutely freaks me out. But looking at these things, they've just got some, you just know, come from the approaches and the landings and the takeoffs, that these have to be some amazing areas for doing some diving. So aside from a few packets of almonds, this segment from Chuuk to Guam is the only other segment on this entire journey that has a meal service, other than that very first one I showed you earlier. So if you're on the route, you may want to take along some extra food, because it's about 12 hours between meal services. And that can get a little bit long, and you can get hungry. There are some little things that you can pick up in the terminals along the way, but not very substantive. So you may want to pack some bars or other snacks, whatever you like to eat when you're traveling, because you're probably going to dip into that. So after the long day's journey, and we're sort of 14 hours in at this point, we started to do our approach to Guam. Guam has such an amazing history, and from a military perspective, Second World War perspective, very important strategically. Didn't really appreciate why until I saw this from above, and why it would be so important, both in terms of geographical location, but also its geology and the way that it's structured and made up. There's a lot of mountains, but also flat areas where they could build airports, safe spots for ships. And so that really contributed to its importance. Again, a beautiful island to see on the approach. It was really, really neat to see, just between the mountains, the greenery. It was all like just really quite incredible. So we're finally on our final approach into Guam. This ended as I said, a 12 and a half hour, or rather 14 and a half hour journey for the day. Getting tired at this point, knew I still had to travel on to Manila. But this is the overview of the day doing the island hopper. This is the core island hopper route. So I'm going to conclude with this and not go on to that route to Manila. So I hope you really enjoyed the video. Please give this a thumbs up, like it, and please do subscribe to the channel. I really appreciate it. Thanks for watching, and may your life's journeys be everything you dreamed of.